Yo, what's going on today, guys? We're back here for another video. So today is going to be day one of the new set dropping, and we've actually had like two pretty big tournaments already. Obviously nothing the size of like the RC days where like we get like 1,000 people, but we've had like these 200 plus people tournaments. We've had both the magma going on, which the cut is going to be tomorrow, and then we also have the Judy tournament that he is hosting. So shout out to him for actually hosting a tournament on day one. And first off, just before we go into the new decks, as you can see here in the top standings, it looks like Darkrai Giratina might possibly be the best deck. It's legit just the LeBron, it is the GOAT. Darkrai Giratina has been doing very good in both of these tournaments, but let's actually go into the new decks. So the first new deck is going to be actually Sylveon Umbreon Greninja. So this deck is very strong. You only have Umbreon as the attacker. If you are facing something like an Oricorio, you could theoretically tech in the other Umbreon. The one that, you know, is one energy and it's also a non-EX, so you can do that. But, you know, just with the access of Sylveon, you have this new Find a Friend Eevee, which is just very powerful because it almost guarantees, you know, it does guarantee you getting a Pokemon, so you could easily use this, get a Sylveon or the Umbreon that you do need. Obviously, you always could get another Eevee, but hopefully either thin your deck out of the Pokeballs or a Professor Research first. Then obviously you can also get the Greninja and the Froakies. So this deck is running a lot of Pokemon. I've seen some builds, if they are running like the non-EX Umbreon, take out like an EVEX for example, but EVEX is very good because baby Pokemon are actually going to be meta relevant, at least on day one they are, and they are very strong. So EVEX does knock out a baby Pokemon. And then you have like two like tech slots as well if the silvers. This person was running silver that was doing very good in the tournament, but I've also seen some builds, you know, run a red card. And I've actually been seeing a lot of cards, or not a lot of decks use actually an underrated card, bro. The Pokeflute combined with Umbreon and Greninja is very powerful to get a free KO. So I've seen some decks utilizing the Pokeflute. I think it's going to be one of these staples with the Umbreon Greninja package going forward. Because I think it's one of those things where like one person is going to use it, everyone's going to see how good it is, and then everyone's going to start using it themselves. For the next deck, we actually have Donphan Lucario. So Donphan is being played in like a multiple ways. I've seen some people use Tyrogue because it is a baby Pokemon and it is obviously energy. Like you don't have to use put energy on it for the 20 attack, so it can be good going first. I've also seen some people run the Hitmonlee to snipe because it can snipe a baby Pokemon. Plus, you know, Hitmonlee is pretty good, you know, opens access to Cyrus. I've also been seeing people run the new Hitmontop instead, the one that does 20 to the bench and then also 20 to the active, which is basically a Pheromosa. The downside of this Hitmontop is that it is a 2 retreat cost, which unfortunately sucks. I think if this was a 1 retreat cost, this would be way better. But there are different ways to run this deck. Also, this person is currently the best Donphan in the Magma tournament, but there's also Zatsumi. I'll show his deck profile as well. Zatsumi has also made Top Cut using Donphan, Sudowoodo, and Hitmonlee, like I was saying. So they are running like way different energy cards. Like they're running Lyra with the X speed. Well, this run doesn't have any swap cards and it's playing actually the Hiker with the double Geo. I personally like Geo with the Donphan for multiple reasons. One, if Crobat EX does become meta, it lets stuff like Riolu and Tyrogue, if you are playing Tyrogue, but it lets Riolu or like Hitmontop for example actually one-shot something like a Zubat, you know, before they evolve it. And with Fanfi, it also lets you one-shot an Eevee, obviously, you know, the non-Eevee EX. So I really do like the Geotech in the Donphan. It was actually something I was using as well when I was trying the deck out myself. Also, the Hiker probably is a tech slot, but, you know, it can make your deck more consistent because the downside of this deck is that it is 2 stage 1s. But essentially, Eevee is very popular because there's just so many evolution decks. There's Eevee Box, Umbreon, Sylveon, Espeon, which we will get into later, which Espeon is actually good, by the way. Surprise, no one actually saw that coming. Like everyone was saying it's pretty bad, but it's actually really good. Yeah, there's just a lot of cards that are weak to fighting, bro, which is why Donphan is very powerful. So next up, we actually have the Crobat Sylveon deck. So people are just running Umbreon because you're already playing the EVs. You have Darkrai for the extra dark attacker because, you know, you're going to be like Crobat's only 1 energy. You just, like I said, have the tech slot for Umbreon. I've seen some people play the non-EX Umbreon. It's kind of like up to you, but you know, the Umbreon EX is very powerful. Then you just have Cyrus, stuff like Silver. Obviously, those are kind of like flex loss, but like red card plus Silver is very strong, you know, combined with the power of Sylveon's draw power. Then you have stuff like Giant Cape, you know, just like Crobat or Darkrai, you know, any card basically live an additional hit. So Crobat is just very strong offensively in the beginning because, you know, you do 70 damage, actually 80, you know, with the poison. You also have very high HP at 170 and only a 1 retreat cost. So it's just one of those very good, like fast aggressive rare candy decks, kind of like similar to Solgaleo, where like if you get this like turn 1, or like obviously like you evolve on the turn 1, you can't evolve in the Crobat. It's very hard sometimes for the opponent to come back unless, you know, they also have like a good hand. Our next deck is actually going to be Ho-Oh and Lugia. So Ho-Oh and Lugia is actually pretty decent because the baby Pokemon are strong, which is what we've been saying. If the baby Pokemon weren't strong, this deck would not be good, but because they are. So this deck is running Raikou, and Raikou is here literally just because it knocks out Oricorio, because otherwise you would lose. I think Raikou is a must. I've been playing this deck and without Raikou, and Oricorio is going to be very popular, I think, because Pichu is extremely strong, and obviously Pichu allows an Oricorio to attack on turn 2 if you do go first. So it looks like electric types are strong, so I do recommend playing Raikou, or you could probably find like another card, maybe like a fire type, because you have Magby that deals with Oricorio, but I think Raikou might just be the best option. But you definitely want to play stuff like 2 Leafs, Elemental Switch. The 1 Irida is very nice, and then you also want to play the 2 Giant Capes on here for the baby Pokemon so they don't get one shot or like knocked out easily, because yeah, you just don't want them to get knocked out. Because like something like a Phanpy, because Donphan is kind of meta relevant, at least on day 1, can one shot them, and then stuff like EX as well. But essentially, you just turbo everything onto Ho-Oh. You use Ho-Oh attack, you know, you just charge up on Lugia. I've been also seeing some decks, and I was personally doing this myself because I only have 1 Lugia. I was playing 1 Lugia, and then I was actually slotting in an Arceus as a replacement because it's like an attacker that won't discard energy. So in certain situations, I found the Arceus to be useful. Obviously the Lugia is nice because it does basically one-shot every single thing. I've seen, you know, some builds running Guzma. I was personally playing around with like 2 Iridas and a red card, and I found that deck to be working very good, but obviously it is kind of up to you. You know, there's like this deck, like basically the mandatory cards is, let me just take out the mandatory cards. These are the mandatory cards. The Raikou is obviously a tech option to not lose to Oricorio, which I do recommend, especially if it is meta. Obviously, if it's not meta and if you're playing ranked, you might want to take it out. But at least in tournament play, I recommend the Raikou. And so you basically have 3 tech slots, possibly 4, and it's kind of up to you. So the next deck is actually going to be Espeon Sylveon. So the nice thing about Espeon is that it's also psychic, so it does actually allow you to attack with Sylveon, unlike the Umbreon version. And yeah, so people thought the 30 healing wasn't going to be that much, but it actually does stack up, bro. When you combine it with stuff like Giant Cape and an Eevee bag, this build has done good in both of the tournaments. We can see here like Corndog got 12th place, so shout out to you. You can see another one at 10th place in the Judy tournament, and I believe if we go back to the Magma, there was also one Yen 6th place. So I think the reason it does pretty good is because it's very good against Darkrai. Like, it basically just negates Darkrai Giratina. It also helps against the poison against Crobat. So I'm actually a big fan of this deck because I really thought Espeon was going to be garbage. Obviously, the more viable and better cards we have in the meta is just the more fun, because the more choices we have. And then because we are running, like, you know, for EVs, we could tech in the non-EX Sylveon for Oricorio. Plus, it's also just a very powerful attacker, doing up to 130 damage if you do have a full board. And then, you know, you just have stuff like 2 EV bags, Sabrina, Cyrus, Guzma, Mars, the usual stuff, and like the Giant Cape for the EVs because they only have 140 HP. Yeah, kind of surprised that Espeon is this good, and I'm very happy. Mainly because I got a rainbow, but you know, I actually just think it's cool, bro, that we actually have more like kind of like pure EV decks to play. It's obviously not like EV box because, you know, you're only playing Espeon and Sylveon, but it's like kind of like a psychic version of the EV box deck. And next up, we just have Dragonite, bro, with Pichu and Zorora. This version was running Cleffa. I've seen some of them not run Cleffa. You know, you just like don't kind of need it. You could like always just play like a second Zorora, or just play another support card, maybe like a silver or red card, some type of hand disruption, which I actually kind of prefer. I don't think you really need the Cleffa that much. I think if you really wanted something like, you know, consistency, you could either add like a Pokecom or an Iono, but obviously this build is going to be currently undefeated in the Magma tournament at 7-0. We can look at their matchups real quick. Yeah, they beat 4 Dartinas, a Skarmory deck, so they basically beat every like meta relevant deck that's like not Umbreon or like some type of like Sylveon Greninja deck. But yeah, like Pichu just like lets you turbo. I don't know if they're playing pure water with the Pichu, and because they also have the Zorora, they might be just for the extra consistency, but you could possibly be playing Door Energy just in case you don't have those cards. But yeah, you have the Lyra, you also have the Old Amber just in case you don't have the Lyra to be able to attack twice with Dragonite. And a lot of decks are just EXs, bro, so Dragonite attacking twice just will win you a game. Lyra just makes it so you can consistently do that more often, and Pichu also helps you do it faster. So I think Dragonite is a very strong deck currently in the meta. or at least not a, I don't know if it's going to be like the strongest of strong decks, but it can be very strong, you know, in the right situations if you do get like the god combo. So I definitely think it's going to be a mainstay, and it's going to be a deck that probably won't have like the highest representation, but you probably will see one here and there, which I think is very cool. Because I think they made Dragonite in mind with Lyra, but unfortunately these came out in different sets. So I really like when like new cards come in the meta and it makes past Pokemon good, kind of like how Flareon in EVEX kind of boosted the how like useful Leafeon EX is. And also just a funny thing that I said, I literally said that Pichu is just a better Zorora, bro, in the Silvally matchup because it allows you to more consistently be able to tackle Silvally going first. Said that on my Pichu Magby video. So it is actually also doing very good in the Judy tournament. We can see here it is currently going to be 8-1. It is currently fighting in top cut. I think that they're pretty close to like at least like top 8. Maybe this already is top 8, but I'm not too sure. Anyways, that is the wrong deck. Yeah. So, you know, you could also let you either Urkori or Silvally be able to attack turn 1 with Pichu. You don't need to run something like Dawn, so you can actually play more useful supporters. So I really like this. Yeah, I think you basically have like every single supporter can just be used on your turn besides like stuff like Guzma, which I think is kind of necessary in the Silvally matchup, because if you don't want to be attacking with like the Dark Pendant, because like if you lose your support cards by attacking, that's like pretty bad. So I think the Guzma is like a necessity. I think the one card you probably could maybe slide out, bro, is like the Geo, maybe the Cyrus, but I think those are very strong cards, so I don't think you would. But like probably like the Silver is probably like, honestly, like Silver or Mars could probably like get taken out, but I think both of them are very strong because they are cards that can be instantly used with Silvally. You don't need like a special requirement like Guzma, like kind of like you need Guzma to have a tool on your opponent's side. So yeah, I think it's just interesting. Anyways, these are like the new best decks currently from the new cards that I think are very sick. Obviously, you know, rank comes out tonight, where there's going to be more meta development, and there's going to be more tournaments on the weekend with the Ursies Day. So I will make a new meta update when we do find out what the new meta decks are going to be, and if there are any changes on these deck lists from these current ones that I showcased. Anyways, I've been having a blast playing the new set. I'm going to be entering a lot of tournaments this week, next week as well, hopefully, if I have time from work. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you guys like these decks in the comments. Peace out and have a lovely day.